Let's get into it. Someone told me that 2 claps was just arrogance. You know what? How about this? I should just make a video, 5-minute video, just clapping. So dumb. I won't do that. I'll do a 24-hour live stream. It'd be so dumb. Anyways, guys, let's get into it. Sold Not For Sale podcast. We got Joe Rogan. They're going to be touching on some things in this clip, and we're going to touch on them afterwards as well. I'm going to be talking about Disease X very quickly because there's another invisible enemy apparently. Then they're going to be touching on CNN's ratings dropping and why you can't trust CNN. And Joe Rogan, you know him, he has a bad relationship with CNN, so he goes in on them. Then I'm going to show you a little something that I found very suspicious, and it's CNN and Ozempic. And this is almost, it just seems like they're so in bed with this type of thing. It's almost like a commercial, but I'll explain when I show it to you guys. Then we're going to be talking about the depression that CNN spreads. Kim Iverson is going to be talking a little bit about that while on the Hill. And then we are going to talk about the carbon footprint of gardeners, because apparently if you want to grow your own food, that's a no-no. You know why? Climate change. Don't do it. Don't be selfish now. Let's get into it. Don't forget about the new channel I got, Coach Colin Media, where I break away from the Rogan content. If you want to see that, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. But for now, let's get into this Rogan clip.
People censored and kicked off. So many of them have been proven to be true.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. So many people thought they were doing the right thing. They thought, I'm doing my part. This is what we're supposed to do. Stop the spread. I'm full on board.
We're all together.
But let's look at what happened. And people are always like, why do you keep fucking bringing up the vaccine? For multiple reasons. But listen, this is a playbook that now we have.
Right.
For the next time they fucking try and do this shit.
Right.
Don't forget about this.
Well,
Don't forget
about disease
X
now. What is that? When was the last time they were talking about a disease that doesn't exist, that's not affecting anybody, that literally there's no one sick, there's no one dying, and they're talking about how it's coming?
Well, just watch what Bill Gates does, because last time he invested $50 million in a company, he made a pretty good score, and then he pulled all his money out.
And then he started disparaging the effectiveness of the vaccine.
After he pulled his money out, though.
After he pulled his money out. And he also started saying that the virus wasn't as bad as we thought it was.
Yeah.
Oh, gee. How convenient.
Yeah, what happened to the flu?
Yeah. The flu went away.
0 cases. It's crazy. I mean,
it is pretty crazy.
But we cannot forget about what happened.
No.
Because this is what they're going to do next time.
Well, the big loser in this, besides the people that lost their jobs and their businesses closed and people lost their lives, the big loser has been mainstream media, because the trust in mainstream media is at an all-time low. I mean, they are laying off journalists left and right. No one wants to read the newspaper anymore. No one believes them. CNN lost all their big hosts. It's like they lost.
And they lost their streaming service.
Yeah. Well, that was hilarious. They dumped money into something to get people to pay for something that no one wants for free.
Yeah.
And it was like Anderson Cooper's book club. Like, what the fuck are you doing? if I was a shareholder in CNN,
how much? Only $10 a month? Okay.
Yeah. I was like, what the fuck are you guys doing? Do you really think anybody's going to pay for CNN? Like, no. What are you offering?
Nobody watches now that Trump's not.
No.
The numbers they get are so small. That's why, it's platforms like this that are actually bringing the information that people want to watch. Instead of watching the fucking news like people used to trust in, it's 6 o'clock nightly news and I'm going to get this story. There's no more Walter Cronkites out there.
Right.
It's long-form conversations that are actually informing people on what's going on.
It's that, and it's people steering you to legitimate journalists that are independent. The Michael Schellenbergers, the Glenn Greenwalds, the people that are experts in their field, the Brett Weinsteins, the people that actually know what they're talking about. But it's just a weird landscape that we're in now that didn't exist before, where we're absolutely sure that you can't trust the mainstream media anymore. We're absolutely sure of that. And even boomers know that now. Even the people that have been trusting the mainstream media their whole life, like, well, something's wrong. They don't know what it is, but something's wrong.
Pfizer.
Yeah. Oh, those are amazing. Those compilations. Anderson Cooper, brought to you by Pfizer.
I was watching the playoff game the other day, and it said, NFL football, brought to you by Pfizer. I was like, yeah, I knew that.
Yikes.
Yeah.
Well, they made a lot of money, and they'd like to do that again, and that's what you have to be really careful about. But what they're doing that again now with is Ozempic, and they're making a shitload of money off of this drug that essentially paralyzes your fucking stomach. It slows your body's ability to digest. It causes a host of gastrointestinal issues for some people, all sorts of weird side effects. People have died taking it, and they're pushing it, and they're pushing it even on kids. It's like a primary weight loss strategy for obesity. Instead of dietary change, instead of realizing, like, you got to get better the
same way you got sick. Why am I doing this? Because there's an ad coming up right now, guys, and I want to spare you guys from the ads. I know you see them already enough. Joe Rogan says you got to get better the same way you got sick, and that it's ridiculous that people are expecting to just take this thing and be completely fine, and that's not the way the world works. And we're going to get into that in a little bit, because from what I can see, CNN is actually, it's like a commercial, but I'll explain soon. Let's get back into the clip.
See how you got fat?
Exercise.
You had too many calories? This is how you got to lose weight. So you have to have less calories in than you're burning, and you got to exercise. And how about start drinking water? Stop drinking soda. We had this chart up yesterday of how many people on food stamps buy soda. Like how much of food stamps is spent on soda. It's fucking crazy. It's like poor people just drinking poison, drinking sugary poison.
But see, that's part of the problem too. You look at not just what they pushed or what they closed down during the lockdowns. You had what was open. You had fast food restaurants open.
Yep.
Like you had fucking processed food places open. But the food that's actually the best for you oftentimes is the most expensive.
Yeah.
So you have to find a way to, whether it's doing all out, tariffs on certain, extra taxes on certain types of products, or, I don't know how you're going to change the farming system, especially with Bill Gates being one of the biggest farm landowners there, and he's pushing, insects and his what's it called, appeal thing that he's putting on all the fruit and stuff. But the problem is, in order to eat healthier, you have to spend more money, because the shitty food is the least expensive.
What scares the shit out of me is what they're doing to farmers in Europe. Like the Dutch farmers.
Yeah.
And in Ireland, they're telling farmers that they have to kill cows because they have too many cows and they're contributing to the global warming.
See the guy I think he was in Congress, who was interviewing somebody and asking these, climate change people about how much CO2 is, and they're way off.
Yeah, they're way off.
And
they're making the decisions.
Yeah.
And they literally are just, it's completely ideological. The ideological battle, the demon that you're fighting is climate change. And we must do something to stop climate change. Meanwhile, India and China aren't doing a fucking thing, and they're contributing to most of it. Literally most of the carbon that's being released. Like if you look at the amount of fucking coal plants that China has, they're opening up new ones. They have hundreds of them in construction.
Wasn't that the whole point of the, what was it, in Paris? They had some sort of
climate accord.
Yeah, but it wasn't taking effect, or there was different rules for other countries, but we had to adhere to something that nobody else was adhering to.
It's control.
But that's what we've been doing if you look at, I saw some something on X about like what they were telling us in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s. The world was always going to end based on something, and now it's this climate change. We got to change the way we live in order for us to keep going. It's like they've been doing this for the last 5 decades.
They would like to control the food system, and there's a tremendous amount of money in controlling the food system. And if they could get you to only buy their food, and they can convince you that their food is somehow or another emits less carbon, and come up with some fucking Hollywood math that shows you that this is the only way to do it and this is the way out of this.
Well, I just learned something online that if you grow your own food, actually your carbon footprint is much greater than.
I posted that on my Instagram, and it got fact checked. It got fact checked. Yeah, I don't see the fact check, but if someone goes to my page and sees that, it says something about like partially true or not. Like, listen, it's a fucking article that was in whatever newspaper it was that I saw, and I was like, this is hilarious. Like, how is that even possible?
Crazy is that?
How is it even possible that it emits more carbon? You're literally growing plants in the ground which take carbon dioxide and convert them to oxygen.
Yep.
That's all you're doing. You don't have any heavy machinery. You're growing your own food. So you just got a little garden. So you growing your own food releases more carbon.
Do not do it.
I don't even know how they did the math. Like, how the fuck did they even say that? What does it say if you go to my page and it says it's fact checked?
I don't see a fact check.
Oh, it's definitely fact checked.
I just checked.
My wife showed it to me.
I'm just saying I didn't see it. I just checked on my phone too. I don't see it.
Well, maybe they took it down because people freaked out.
Yeah, there it is. 5 times greater.
How's it possible? You're literally growing something that takes oxygen and puts it out into the air. It converts carbon dioxide to oxygen through photosynthesis. That's literally what it does. It's literally what plants do. They make oxygen.
Think about that. What if you didn't have? Everybody's got lawns, right? What if what if you had your own fucking garden?
Yeah.
Like how different would things be?
Well, you'd be a lot fucking healthier.
Yeah.
You'd be a lot healthier if you're eating stuff that doesn't have fucking all kinds of herbicides and pesticides sprayed all over it. You know, that when they've done these tests, when they check people's blood, some insane number, what is it, like 90-something% of people they tested had glyphosate at detectable levels?
Yeah.
And glyphosate's nuts. Like, they fucking spray that shit on everything, and it's crazy. That's really bad for you.
I mean, you know who owns Monsanto, right?
It's Bayer, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Bayer, the same people that during the Holocaust the Brigham talked about that on my podcast, where they took these people that were in the concentration camps. They took 150 women. They tried their drugs on them, killed them, and they said,
"We need more.
We need more," and they sent them more. So they sent them more. So that company, Bayer, did that.
Yeah, Bob
During the
Manzano,
fall.
which was taking a bunch of heat because their Roundup is killing people.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
How do you change that? I mean, that's
well, you need a guy like Bobby Kennedy in office.
Yeah.
But boy, they would put him in a convertible and take him to a ride through Dallas quick.
I don't know. I would think at some point though, wouldn't that start?
Well, I think at some point in time,
People are
gonna
waking.
Get,
They're
yeah.
waking up.
Yeah.
To certain things. There's still the loudest group is not the majority.
Is definitely not the majority. Now, I just want to say right away, I've said this for years. I say this to my wife all the time. It's like one of my phases of becoming an old man where I say the same thing to her every time we're driving down a street. I'm like, what if everybody just had a garden? I'm like, what are these lawns? We're like, what is this? How does this do any good? I'm like, look at this island where there's just trees. Why isn't there just food here? Why don't we just have that all the time? Yeah, like, I never considered a condo because you need to have land. You need to be able to grow food. You just need it. I barely know how to do it, and I'm still adamant about how much you need to do that. And if you know how to do that, please pass that knowledge on. Please do a workshop with people. I know a guy who's a farmer who's great at it. He does it by himself, has a huge little, but it's his whole backyard, which is very big. It's like, a quarter of an acre, all food, and he handles it all. He's built it all. He handles it all. I'm like, you should teach people how to do this. He's like, I want it to be fun for me. I'm like, oh, God. But yeah. Let's start at the top, though. I really like Aaron Rodgers. Really like him. And you can tell in this episode that he wants to go way deeper into the conspiracy realm than Joe is willing to allow. Like, he's really out there. He didn't get to fully express it. He touched on a few things. They went into MK Ultra and some stuff. But you could tell he's really deep in that world. Like, I'm talking about, he's probably, if he digs a little deeper, he's going to hit Eddie Bravo. That's what I'm talking about. He's deep. Very deep. And that's why I like having the second channel now and this channel, because before I didn't feel like this stuff was newsworthy. And now I got a news channel, I got this channel, and I want to talk about this stuff. So let's start at the top with Disease X. This is what they touched on first. What is Disease X? Honestly, Disease X is nothing, guys. Disease X is a placeholder concept used by the World Health Organization to refer to a hypothetical unknown pathogen that could cause a future epidemic or pandemic. That's it. That's all it is. This really tripped me out. I don't know if you guys can see this. I had to make it very small to fit it in the screen. But it's talking about, does Disease X really exist? And could it kill you? Disease X is a hypothetical, exactly what I just said. It does not exist. But the concept of Disease X describes a very real and growing threat to human health. And the world must prepare better to respond to. So it doesn't exist, but the world has to be on edge about it. It has to be on edge. It's very, very odd. And then this part of the article here also tripped me out. It says, when is it coming? It says, no one can predict where or when the next Disease X will emerge. What is certain, however, is that a future Disease X is out there and will, at some point, spill over from animals into people and begin to spread in an outbreak. It's basically just an invisible enemy. So it's not real. It's not out there. But they're saying it's not real and it's not out there, but it is real and it is out there. Perfect way to just demoralize people. Well, we got through this, but there's another one and it's coming. And we're all everybody's just supposed to confirm, yes, science, it's coming, it's real, doesn't exist. It's so Orwellian, man. But I just wanted to touch on that really quick in case you're wondering, like, what is Disease X? What's he talking about? They brought it up at the World Government Summit, which is just exactly what it sounds like, World Government. It's basically like the WEF, but it's more of a convention. But still, regular people like you and I are not allowed to go. We're not allowed to be there at all. And then they also talked about it at Davos, the World Economic Forum. They also talked about Disease X, when it's coming, what it's going to do, and how everybody's going to prepare. Again, two conversations that we're not involved in whatsoever, but the only part of the conversation we're involved in when it comes to that is being scared. being scared and being ready to listen to whoever tells us what to do. Sounds fun. Sounds great. The future's bright, right? Now let's move on to CNN. Ratings dropping. Check this out. In shocking ratings plunge, CNN loses 1/3 of their primetime audience. Okay? CNN drops 26% in primetime as Fox News dominates April cable ratings. Now, just so you know, end of April. Well, no, this is not even the same year. Let me just go on here. Profits slump at CNN as ratings plummet. Okay? Okay, let me just go back here. This is from 2019. This is from 2019. This is from 2022. What, 2020? Let me verify that real quick. This is from 2022. Their ratings have been dropping steadily since 2019. Steadily dropping. And the thing is, it makes perfect sense that the ratings are dropping because I'm sure you've seen CNN. I'm sure you don't watch it. I'm sure you don't go out of your way to find it and see what's going on with Anderson Cooper. You know what I mean? I couldn't even name any. Wolf Blitzer, I think, is still there. I'm not looking to hear what they have to say. Van Jones, I'm not looking to see Van Jones fake cry about something that Trump did. I'm just never now who Charles Barkley. I'm going there to hear Charles Barkley say he's going to punch people in the face and Gayle King laugh about it. Two black people talking about attacking the black population because they endorse Trump. What? No, I'm not watching any of that. It's so bought and paid for. It's ridiculous. But here's the thing that really got me while I was looking into this stuff. I was watching this and I was like, when Joe brought up Ozempic, right? So this kind of is a way to segue to Ozempic, but still on CNN. I started realizing they're so in bed with their advertisers that they don't do news. And I know some of you are like, yeah, of course not, obviously. But I mean to the point of, this is a commercial, what you're about to watch. I want you to think of that. So many times when we watch CNN, we think news. But listen to this. This is a commercial. Those of you that grew up with me in the 90s, where we were staying up late and catching infomercials because that was the only thing on, or Star Trek here and there. Listen to this. This reeks of infomercial. Listen.
Other drugs like it could help curb addictions. So the use of Ozempic has soared over the last year. It's a prescription medication, which of course was aimed initially at treating type 2 diabetes, but many people say they take it instead to lose weight. And now doctors report they're finding some other unintended side effects of the positive variety. Yeah. CNN's Meg Jarrell is here. So some patients now telling their doctors that they no longer want to smoke. They don't feel like drinking anymore. Was this a surprise?
Yeah, it's really fascinating to hear from patients and doctors the experience of taking these medicines. The same way they talk about sort of just losing interest in food. Some people describe losing interest in alcohol or vaping. So scientists are actually researching whether this is a true effect, running clinical trials. We dug into what might be going on. Check it out.
These days, Sherry Ferguson has swapped her vape pen for an Ozempic pen.
I thought, I'm not enjoying vaping, so I may as well just put this into the battery bin at work and I'll see how long I can go without it. And that was 54 days ago.
Ferguson started using Ozempic 11 weeks ago to combat weight gained during the pandemic that she says was increasing her risk of diabetes. A smoker for much of her life, Ferguson switched to vaping last July. But after starting Ozempic, she says something changed.
It's like someone's just come along and switched a light on and you can see the room for what it is, and all of these vapes and cigarettes that you've had over the years they don't look attractive anymore. It's very, very strange, very strange.
Ferguson is one of many patients taking drugs like Ozempic for weight loss who say they've also lost interest in some addictive behaviors. Doctors told CNN that patients most commonly report an effect on alcohol use. It may be because these drugs in a class known as GLP-1s have an effect not just in the gut, but also in the brain. It's something being studied at the National Institutes of Health, where researchers just published a paper showing semaglutide, the active ingredient in Ozempic, reduced what they called binge-like alcohol drinking in rodents.
We believe that at least one of the mechanisms how these drugs reduce alcohol drinking is by reducing the rewarding effects of alcohol, such as those related to a neurotransmitter in our brain, which is dopamine. So these medications are likely to make alcohol less rewarding.
And it's not just alcohol. And
I'm sorry. Let's get to it. Now, that guy made me laugh. I'm sorry. Let's get to it. Now, obviously, this seems like more of a commercial than anything. You see what I mean? They're like, oh, well, there's a lot of positive side effects. Like, think about an infomercial that you've seen over time, throughout the years, and then think about what you just saw. How is that any different? Right? It's one of the reasons, in my opinion, why their ratings are dropping so much. Because the bought and paid for-ness of it all is so apparent to everybody. Again, Joe was talking about how even boomers are like, oh, something's wrong with the mainstream media. It's because even if you don't know, you can still feel it. Because they're so similar to commercials. They're so similar to doing things that are just for advertisers. And when you're sitting in front of the TV or phone or whatever, computer, you know that you're supposed to be seeing news. So as you start hearing them talk about all this, it almost feels like the Truman Show. You know, the Truman Show where he's talking to, I think, his wife, and she's like, oh, I use this cocoa. This is the best cocoa. I've tried other cocos and they're not as good. And he's like, what are you talking about? That's exactly what that was like. So of course the ratings are dropping. People aren't going to put up with that. Now, we're going to move on to a video where this reporter is talking about how the mainstream media makes people feel, in particular CNN. And I have to say, I have a story about this as well. I have seen this exact thing that she's talking about. Let's get into it.
It's a doom and gloom storyline of, oh no, the white supremacist, racist, misogynist, sexist, Russian Putin puppet is back. And so, this is the worst thing to happen to American democracy. And so they would, it just goes back to that. They just need doom and gloom. So that's the problem. And the people I know, even in my own personal life, if they watch CNN, they are miserable people. It's really, and that is unfortunate. I don't know how.
You don't think that just describes
it.
people who watch exclusively cable news in general?
No, I think CNN, MSNBC and CNN, Fox, right now I feel like the people that watch Fox, it depends on when they're watching. So if they watch kind of during the day, they're just kind of getting their basic news. But if they watch at night, the personalities are so different. They're not really in line ideologically. I mean, Tucker to Sean Hannity is pretty different. And so, on a lot of things. And so I don't really get the sense from Fox viewers as much that the world is like everything is horrible. I mean, they're definitely griping. I think that's common amongst cable viewers is griping. Oh, this Biden administration and these bad things going on here. But the actual misery, depression, feeling like the world is ending, not wanting to have children because you don't want to bring them into this terrible, awful world, not wanting to celebrate the 4th of July because, oh my gosh, it's celebrating the treacherous history of this horrible country founded on the worst principles, right? That's like CNN and MSNBC viewers. They don't even want to celebrate holidays. I mean, they're just miserable. So these networks, I think, need to realize that you can only milk misery for so long. People don't actually fundamentally want to be miserable. People want to be happy. It's kind of the human condition. So if they continue to feed misery to their audience, eventually their audience says, I don't want to be miserable anymore. I'm turning you off. Maybe they don't go somewhere else, but they just go away from you.
Very, very true. Very true. That people just, they just pick up on it eventually. That wasn't what happened with me. I'm just, I tuned into YouTube and just started watching things and podcasts and interviews, and those things spoke to me way more than anything that the news was pushing. I like human experience more than anything when I'm taking in content, but it's so true. People don't want to constantly hear about how terrible everything is. And on top of that, and I don't know if people notice it, I definitely notice it. I'm tired of hearing about how I am the problem. I'm tired about hearing how My wife is white. I'm tired of hearing about how one half of my family is terribly this horrible issue as white men and women, and they're super oppressive. I'm tired of hearing about how me driving to work or me driving anywhere is this huge issue in the world. I'm tired of people just being told that we're the problem. And anything that has to be fixed is solely because of us, and that's why you're the ones that have to fix it. Your behavior has to change. It's like we didn't do anything. All we're doing is building the country and building the economy. That's what we're doing. We're helping the economy run. We spend the money and we do the work. We're not the problem. We're the gas in the engine, actually. But time and time again, whether it's about climate, whether it's about, the pandemic, we're always the problem. Us wanting to leave the house is a problem. Us wanting to drive around is a problem. Then it's us wanting to eat meat is a problem. Then it's us wanting to garden is a problem. Then it's us wanting to hunt to find our own food is a problem. Then us wanting to be independent is a problem. Us wanting freedom is a problem. It's ridiculous. And I only say that gardening part because the article that Joe was talking about is actually very true. Carbon footprint of homegrown food 5 times greater than those grown conventionally. Now, there was a video that was very dense that I found. It was a long video, but it was a guy who actually went and found the studies, and he went through it all, and he's somebody that grows his own food. He's a farmer of sorts, and he actually broke down how this study is actually nonsense. What they did to figure this out, they added in a bunch of factors that if you were an actual gardener, a farmer, you would know not to add these things in. They were adding things in to someone's carbon footprint that actually took carbon out of the atmosphere. There were so many different things. So it's actually nonsense. But here's the thing. Again, as soon as people decide, because I don't know about you, I've been hearing about a lot of people being like, I want to grow my own food. I'm one of those people. I want to hunt. I want to be more independent. I want to know how to defend my family. Like a lot of people figured out through the past 4 years that, this system is actually very fragile. And I was essentially useless when the food was just gone from the grocery store. Like, I don't know about you. I had that flash of I walked into a grocery store and there was no meat. And I was like, okay, I guess I'll come back tomorrow. And they were like, we don't know if there'll be any tomorrow. It was getting very interesting. And I was like, wow, if I just knew how to hunt, if I learned 5 years ago how to hunt, I wouldn't even be worried about this. So it's just funny that as soon as people start moving towards wanting to grow their own food, all of a sudden these studies come out saying, you know what, it's actually worse for the environment if you grow your own food. And that goes to this point that I have written here, which is climate control. That's all it is. Climate change, that's the argument. That's the debate that goes on, but it's actually climate control. They're using these studies as a means of control to show you, actually, you know what? Even if you decide to grow your own food and go that independent route away from the system that we have in place, that's actually worse for the environment. So in actuality, we couldn't ethically allow you to do that. And that would be the next step if everybody started pushing towards their own food. They would put a stop to it somehow. They'd be like, oh, you know what? We actually changed the zoning laws and nobody's allowed to have their own garden. Well, sorry, you have to have 10 acres if you want to have your own garden. They'll try and do something like that. The same thing happened with hunting. I remember as soon as there was like this uptick of people wanting to hunt, people wanting to learn. And all of a sudden they're like, oh, well, a lot of deers have this zombie disease. Yeah, you know what? They have this zombie disease and it can actually jump from deer to human. It hasn't yet at all, but it could. And it's hard to tell if they have it. And yeah, you should probably just not be hunting. It's funny how when it comes to climate, everything that people want to do for independence and sovereignty somehow goes against what's going on with the climate. And if you do want to continue doing those things, you become selfish. It seems to be the constant narrative over the past 5 years. When you want to do what you want to do, you're being selfish. I'm just so tired of hearing about it. And then obviously when Joe brought up the last thing that I'll go into, which is controlling the food supply, you could say that's not true. I'm willing to have that conversation of that's not a real thing, right? That they don't want to control the food supply, and the things that are going on are just for climate change, and it's just to save the planet in the next 500 years, and it's not about you, it's about your grandkids, right? I'll have that conversation, but also I have to still notice that if you control food, you control sovereignty, and it goes both ways. If you control what food you consume, what water you consume, how you get that stuff, if you're doing trade with neighbors, whatever, you have your own sovereignty. Now, Tim Kennedy talked about this on Joe Rogan the last time he was on there. And he was talking about sovereignty being the ability to not be compelled to do things. So if, the powers that be say, if you don't do X, Y, Z, you can't come into this grocery store, which means that you won't be able to have food. Sovereignty is you being able to grow your own food, having that ability, growing that food. And when they say do X, Y, Z, you can say, no, I'm not going to do that. I don't need that part of your system. So if they control the food, they control sovereignty. If you control the food, you control your sovereignty. And it's just very convenient that the very thing that gives you independence, gives you your sovereignty, gives you your freedom, they have an issue with. It's convenient that this study pops up just as people want to start gardening, and they are actually doing it. It's convenient that it pops up that hunting deer could be really bad, and you might want to stay out of the forest. There's an invisible enemy in there. You know that, right? It's convenient. It's very, very convenient. I'm actually reminded of one thing before I go. There was a podcast with Eddie Bravo, and I don't remember what the podcast was called. I just saw a clip, and I wish I saved it, but I didn't. But Eddie Bravo was on a podcast, and he was like, you know what they did with hillbillies? And they're like, what? He's like, they convinced us that hillbillies are uneducated, that they're dumb, that they're smelly people, toothless, uneducated, all these things. They convinced us of hillbillies. He's like, but you know what they really are? He's like, they're just people that live off the land. He goes, if you think about that type of person, they could be born and live and not have anything, not have social insurance number, not have a license, not have any type of ID. Their mother gave them their name and they use that name and that's it. And they live off the land and they go hunting and they know where to get their water from and that's it. And somehow through media and through time, we got convinced that that way of living is dumb. It's for dumb people. It's for the slow people. Somehow we got convinced of that. I find that so interesting. I'm trying to find that podcast, but I haven't been able to find it. But it was really interesting when he said that. That might have been the truest thing that Eddie Bravo's ever said. Somehow we got convinced that the way we're actually supposed to live is actually just for the uneducated people. Anyways, guys, that's the video. Like, subscribe, share. If you haven't hit up that other channel, go hit it up. We got about 32 videos on there. And other than that, I'm out.